In a parallel world, Yuya faces a terrifying evil god. He is determined to rush into battle and cut his enemies to pieces with his sword. After his victory, Yuya was taken to another realm by a goddess, his whole body aching from his injuries. While trying to endure it, he angrily declared that he would never want to do this again. The goddess, with a calm expression, acknowledged his doneness, scolding him for ignoring her, causing Yuya to angrily respond, pointing at his dire condition. After the goddess healed Yuya, he worriedly asked if it was really over. She asserts that the evil god Ruin Avilio has been destroyed and will not be resurrected for millennia, allowing the world to slowly return to peace. Yuya then asks the goddess to return him to his original world, but remains skeptical of her ability to return him to the correct world and timeline. The goddess asserts that once he performs the return ritual at the location she has designated, he will be safe, and she only needs to make a few adjustments on her part. Smiling, she notes that, despite being unwittingly summoned from a parallel world, Yuya has overcome many harsh trials, defeated the demon king and the evil god, and restored peace and order. Declaring herself the goddess of Valienis, she graciously bestows her gratitude and blessing upon Yuya. Yuya, unhappily, replies that he does not wish to be summoned again, and tells her to ensure that his efforts are not in vain. The goddess replies that, while she cannot interfere too much with the human world, she will monitor things as much as she can. As the spirit realm is about to close, the goddess advises Yuya to return to the human world to let everyone know that he is safe, making him secretly scold her for her insinuations. As soon as he exits the ruined hall, Yuya reunites with his group and is hugged tightly by a beast girl. Worried about his condition, she is alarmed to see blood on his armor, but he reassures her, saying that he has been healed. One of Yuya's comrades asks if the war is over, and he confirms that the world has been saved. He then turned to the kingdom's princess and told her that the rest was now her, the king, and the others' responsibility. Another comrade urged him to go out and inform the people, and Yuya stepped out of the building, raising his fist in victory, to the cheers of the crowd. Although his real name was Kashiwagi Yuya, in this world, people knew him as Yuya Kashagi. He was originally a university student, and 3 years ago Yuya, who was summoned from modern Japan by Valienis to the Wilterius continent, was sitting in a room with Tia, a beast girl, quietly chatting. He expressed his sadness at the thought that he would never see her and the others again, even though he fought his way back to his original world. Tia begins to sob, and when Yuya tries to comfort her, she bursts into tears, tears streaming down her face as she asks if he is really leaving forever. Yuya is shocked and silently apologizes, recalling her painful past of losing her entire family to slavers and being enslaved. He rescues her by chance, and together they travel, their team gradually becoming her second family. Yuya explains that he belongs in the old world, where his real family awaits. Tia begs him to take her with him, causing Yuya to pause and gently pat her head to calm her down. At that moment, a servant entered, announcing that the return ceremony had been prepared. The servant asked if he really wanted to return to his original world, and Yuya confirmed it. The maid, noticing that Yuya had not touched her, suddenly asked him to spend a minute or two with her in the empty room next door. Yuya immediately refused, but she continued her prank, starting to unbutton her shirt and even inviting Tia to join in, even though she thought it might take longer. Yuya was shocked by the maid's joke, both amazed by her beauty and annoyed at the thought that he would only have enough strength for a few minutes. Entering the great hall, where the king and princess were waiting with an honor guard, Yuya and Tia walked up and bowed. Then, he asked Yuya if he wanted to stay in their kingdom, but Yuya firmly refused. The king continued to suggest, thinking that perhaps even Princess Melthuria was not enough to convince him, and confusedly wondered if it was because of the princess's small breasts. Desperate, he even suggested the full-figured maid, causing the princess to angrily hit him on the head. Returning to her serious expression, Princess Melthuria apologized to Yuya for giving him such a burden despite being an outsider, and expressed her and the people's endless gratitude to him. Although Yuya tried to refuse the honor, the princess still earnestly hoped that he would decide to stay, while not hesitating to press her heel against her father's foot to stop him from saying more. Crown Prince Leon approached Yuya, expressing that he hoped Yuya would become his brother-in-law, and that it would be boring without Yuya around. Leon notes that humans are not objects to waste time on and thanks Yuya for everything. Bruno then cheerfully reminds them to cherish their adventures together and take good care of their bodies. But Whisper, a female in the group, coldly declares that she will not cry for a traitor, still angry about how she found out Yuya used to peek at the fairies bathing in the hot springs. Yuya turned back to the king and princess, thanking them for everything and wishing them the best. The king returned the greeting and asked if he had any other requests before leaving. Yuya only asked them to take good care of Tia, and the king and princess happily agreed. He patted Tia's head again, telling her to be good. And she tearfully asked him to come visit her if he ever returned to this world. Yuya agreed and bowed to the royal family before walking to the altar. At the altar, Yuya apologized to the princess for the delay. Melthuria blushed in embarrassment, saying that the ceremony still had a lot of time to prepare, and that she understood how everyone felt. She gently asked him to call her Mel, as usual. Instead of keeping it formal, as she felt embarrassed to have to send him off in such a formal atmosphere, her warm smile made Yuya falter, struggling to keep his composure in the face of the princess's cuteness. Mel asked if he was wearing the same clothes he had when he was summoned, and when Yuya nodded in confirmation, she expressed her gratitude. Knowing that they had no right to drag him into the troubles of the world of Wilturius, he accepted the help without resentment. She confessed that she would never forget that kindness, and promised to live up to it, now that the world had been saved thanks to him. The two looked at each other in silence, until Mel shyly admitted that she had hoped that he would stay and become her husband. Yuya was startled, thinking that she must be joking, since there had been no sign of her before. He also blamed himself for not thinking of it before, but then he rejected the idea, thinking that marrying a princess was too much for him. Princess Melthuria signaled Yuya to begin the ceremony. And as he walked up to the altar, she wished him well, told him how much she enjoyed having him around, and joked that he should stop peeking. Making Yuya blush, she began the ritual, and a bright light gradually filled the space, completely blinding him. As his vision gradually returned, Yuya realized he was looking up at the ceiling in Japan, standing on a chair. He remembered that this was the same place he had been sitting before being summoned to Wilturius, and felt lucky that no one had been there to witness his disappearance and return. Checking his phone, he saw that he had returned to the exact day he had disappeared. Skimming through his notes, he wondered if he would remember everything, like what he had learned during the semester, or the names and faces of the people around him. After packing his things, Yuya decided to go home. But not before stopping by McDonald's, satisfying his craving for cheeseburgers and fries that he didn't have in the other world. As he walked out of the campus, he unexpectedly meets a beautiful girl on a scooter. The girl looks flustered when he greets her, as if they haven't seen each other recently, and despite trying to stay calm, Yuya struggles with not hugging his best friend Kudo Akane, whom he hasn't seen in 3 years. Akane, his high school friend, attends the same university as him but a different department. Looking closely at him for a moment, Akane asks if something happened, commenting that he seems more mature and different than before. Yuya nervously tries to brush off her doubts, saying that it's impossible for someone to change that quickly. Akane is still suspicious and jokingly asks if he has a girlfriend. When Yuya shyly denies it, she laughs and teases him that he has no experience in love. Yuya replies that her experience is no better, making Akane laugh and call him rude, saying that she could totally have a boyfriend but simply doesn't want one yet. Yuya then makes an excuse to leave, saying that he has something to do, namely, satisfy his craving for a burger. However, Akane quickly hops on her scooter and speeds off to a nearby burger joint to make a reservation. Confused but happy, Yuya gets on his motorbike and chases her to McDonald's. When he got there, he saw Akane waving, and the two of them sat together. Akane comments that Yuya's gait was different, he had a different aura, and even his body seemed to have changed. She reiterates that he gave off a completely different vibe. Yuya tries to joke around to deflect, teasing that she might have fallen for him. Akane glared at him with a killer look and threatened to poke his eyes out with a straw, looking away to hide her embarrassment. As Yuya took his first bite of the burger, he suddenly stopped and started crying. He quickly wiped his tears away, making up excuses that he had put too much mustard. He then left and returned home, happy to see that everything was still the same as before. Entering the house, Yuya realized that no one was home, since his mother was working the night shift, and his father was on a business trip in the Middle East. He was not sure if his sister Yumi was in the room. He went up to the second floor and entered his room for the first time in 3 years, finding that everything was the same. In the darkness, Yuya muttered the word light, and a small ball of light appeared in the air, illuminating the room. He then collapsed on the bed exhaustedly, but slowly opened his eyes. Standing up in the room now filled with warm light, Yuya stood in the middle of the bright room, surprised to realize that he could still use magic. He couldn't help but be amazed as he stared at the ball of light floating in the air. Experimenting further, he successfully created a small fireball on his fingertip, and created a gust of wind, realizing that he could use many different types of magic, not just light. Looking at the watch his father had given him when he entered school, Yuya curiously used appraisal magic on it. An information window appeared, revealing that it was a fake watch, worthless, and that his father had been tricked. After getting over the shock, Yuya opened his status window and checked his stats. He was surprised to find that his power was far superior to the standards of this world, especially his ability to use magic. He had also leveled up significantly after defeating the evil god, and his MP consumption had remained the same even in the current world. When he checked his inventory, Yuya found that he still had a lot of equipment, including the holy sword. This situation was really strange, because he thought that his power should have disappeared when he returned, and over time, his memories of the other world would gradually fade, giving way to everyday life. He wondered if it was all just a dream. Yuya quickly recalled everything to try to figure out the reason behind his remaining magic ability. He recalled the process of being summoned by Malthuria, Valienus granting him many special skills, and the arduous training in the Ariana's kingdom until he was strong enough to defeat the Demon King. In the end, he realized that the evil god was the one behind it all, and after the fight, he returned to the capital in joy before returning to his old world. Looking back on the entire journey, Yuya still couldn't figure out why his magic still existed. He wondered if the goddess had done something to him, but there was no way to confirm it. After all, if he didn't use magic, it wouldn't be a problem. However, Yuya had been trained to use magic to the point of being almost unconscious, and giving up such a convenient thing wasn't easy. He sighed, thought about the glowing orb, then turned on the light like a normal person. Putting aside his research on magic, items, and statuses, Yuya decided to focus on hiding this ability from others. As he changed into his clothes, revealing his muscular body, Yuya was surprised to hear a knock on the door from his younger sister Ayumi. Ayumi opened the door without waiting for an answer, walked in and said that she was hungry. Ayumi comments that Yuya looks different somehow, even suspecting that he is on some kind of drug. Yuya, flustered, quickly concealed himself and chased her out, promising to prepare food immediately. Worried about his ability to hide his changes, he decided to skip school the next day and went to a forest on Mount Okutama to test his magic and inventory without being disturbed. He found that he did not feel tired at all, despite climbing the mountain at a rather fast pace, and recalled that his body had also changed during his time in the other world. In a moment of carelessness, Yuya stomped his foot, creating a large hole in the ground. In a panic, he tried to use magic to fill it up, but accidentally created another hole, making him wonder if he was still human. Facing several large boulders, Yuya continued to experiment, easily destroying them into rubble with his fire arrow, ice lance, and water bullet. Seeing his own destructive power, he could only sigh. Even though he had practiced magic diligently, he was surprised by the ability that far exceeded his expectations. Yuya opened his inventory and took out a sword, finding that he could use it as before, although he did not think he would use it here. The thought of walking around town in clothes from another world made him feel strange. However, the idea of processing gems or gold coins with earth magic to sell for a few billion dong made him smile happily. However, Yuya quickly dismissed the thought, reminding himself that he wasn't here to get rich, although he didn't expect much. He felt embarrassed performing the summoning ritual and imagining someone seeing this scene. Suddenly, the air shook, and from the magic circle appeared a shadow wolf that rushed towards him, happily licking his face as if to welcome him. Surprised by his success, Yuya saw Kaguru, recalling that this wolf was a powerful and intelligent legendary creature, capable of hiding in the dark. He reminisced about finding Kaguru in the Demon King's dungeon and making it his companion after defeating his enemies. Yuya apologizes to the wolf for summoning it so suddenly, explaining that he just wanted to test his summoning abilities, but Kaguru is displeased that he forgot about him in the other world and quickly chases him away afterwards. After finishing the experiment, Yuya decides to go out for lunch and shopping. After filling up on KFC, he realizes that he has spent quite a bit of money on food. Seeing a lottery stand nearby, Yuya buys 10 scratch cards and picks one himself, using his appraisal skill to pick the one with the highest value. The lottery stand owner calls him lucky, as he leaves with a large sum of money. However, Yuya suddenly feels anxious and guilty, wondering if this action is like stealing on easy mode. He promises himself that he will never do it again. His thoughts are interrupted when he sees Akane and a girl named Nana being harassed by a group of boys. As he approaches, Akane and Nana's faces light up, and Akane scolds him for being late. When the leader of the group of boys confronts Yuya, he quickly realizes that they have extremely low stats and could be seriously injured if he doesn't hold back. Taking a step forward, Yuya pulls a coin from his wallet and tells them to look, before easily bending a coin in front of the troublemakers, politely asking them to leave. The group of boys panics and apologizes before running away. Nana is delighted while Akane looks at him suspiciously and asks what he did. Not believing Yuya's explanation that they were just talking, Akane presses him to elaborate. He ends up lying and saying that he mentioned the name of a notorious acquaintance of his, and Akane reluctantly accepts the explanation. Yuya then explains that he came to shop for clothes because some of his old ones no longer fit. Hearing this, the two girls offer to help him choose clothes on the condition that he buys them drinks. He agreed, and the group began a shopping spree, from drinks to dinner, leaving Yuya's wallet almost empty. Yuya was glad to have put the money to good use, deciding to leave the rest in the donation box to ease his conscience. As he prepared to return, the group saw a car accident happening right in front of them. A girl was lying unconscious on the road. Yuya quickly told Nana and Ayumi to call the police and ambulance. And then he ran closer to the scene to check on the girl's condition. He used his limit attention skill to avoid people noticing him and make him harder to recognize. And annoyed when he noticed that the surrounding crowd was just taking pictures without calling for help, Yuya quietly damaged their phones with his spark skill. Looking at the unconscious girl, he discovered that she was still breathing. But there was internal damage and a fractured skull, but the brain was still intact. Knowing that he could help, Yuya used his heal skill to partially heal the girl without raising suspicion. The girl began to regain consciousness, and Yuya reassured her not to move while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. After he released a tension limit, Nana told Yuya that the ambulance was on its way and would monitor the girl until the rescue team arrived. Yuya wondered where Akane had gone. And when he turned around, he saw her scolding the driver who had caused the accident and refused to call an ambulance. Angered by the latter's indifferent attitude, Late quietly walked away, reached out and grabbed the irresponsible driver by the neck, lifted him up, and coldly asked if he had anything else to say. Squeezing tighter in anger. Suddenly, Akane stepped forward, grabbed his arm and pressed herself against him, pulling him out of his rage. Yuya immediately let go, causing the driver to cough as he fell to the ground. Akane sighed, upset that dinner ended in such an unexpected incident and just wanted to go home and relax. Yuya said goodbye to Akane and Nana, as he prepared to leave with his sister. Before Yuya left, Akane called out to him, seemingly wanting to say something but then changed her mind, and just waved goodbye. As Yuya walked away, Nana curiously asked Akane if she was okay and asked if she saw the light appear. When Yuya checked on the injured girl, Akane hesitated, thinking that she might not have seen clearly due to the crowd, but admitted that Yuya looked cool at that moment, causing Akane to blush in embarrassment. She looked forward to hearing her thoughts on him that night. Nana smiled and recalled the scene of Akane hugging Yuya, looking forward to hearing her thoughts about him that night. Akane shyly denied it, trying to explain that she didn't hug him for other reasons. 2 days later, Yuya went to his part-time job wearing a t-shirt that was so tight that he was afraid it would tear. The girl who had been in the accident wasn't too badly injured, and only needed a week's rest before returning to school. On the contrary, the driver only had his license suspended for not being drunk. But Yuya placed a curse he learned from the Demon King's library on him, causing him to have diarrhea whenever he felt sexual desire, until Yuya lifted the curse. When he entered the restaurant, Yuya was greeted by the manager named Mizukati. She noticed him arriving early, and praised his hard work, then entrusted the service area to him. After returning after 3 years and realizing that time on Earth hadn't passed, Yuya wasn't sure if he could work normally. Unexpectedly, he saw Mizukati looking at him with a surprised look, asking why he was only wearing half a shirt. Then she apologized and hurriedly got him a new shirt because the old one no longer fit. Mizukati fumbled as he opened his locker, wondering if Yuya had always been this muscular. He was surprised to see the beautiful manager Mizusaki flustered around him, deciding to keep the muscle show to himself to avoid further embarrassment. Once he was dressed in his new shirt, Yuya entered the service area and began diligently serving customers, causing a co-worker named Otherworldly to comment on the situation to the manager who was watching him intently. Yuya found that despite his hesitation, he was still doing a good job, thanks to his stronger physique. He also found that serving customers was fun. Yuya's thoughts were interrupted when his co-worker Demoni asked some customers to lower their volume so as not to disturb others. When the man responded rudely, Yuya calmly stepped forward and asked them to leave if they did not comply. The customer then insulted Yuya, insisting that the customer was king. Yuya responds intelligently and politely, asking them to leave. The angry customers stand up, but quickly become frightened by his overwhelming presence, and hastily pay and leave. Yuya silently recalls that a similar incident happened a few days ago, realizing that he accidentally used magic. Mizusaki anxiously asks if he is okay, apologizing for not stepping in for him. But he reassures her and makes an excuse that he got wet and needed to clean up. She again misunderstands, thinking that he had an accident, to which Yuya frantically explains that it was not the case. Demoni also points to the puddle on the floor, thinking that it was his. Yuya realizes that his abilities and powers are useful, but accidentally using magic can lead to embarrassing or troublesome situations. He feels that life in this world is sometimes a headache. At the same time, deep in a mountain, A dragon awakens and calls the seemingly normal boy master. Yuya returns to his daily routine of studying and working alone in his room. Looking at the holy sword that the king had given him, he wonders what to do with it, having forgotten to return it before leaving the other world. He deduces that the other world will be at peace for a while, after defeating the demon king and the evil god, although there are still some formidable demons. He figures that the sword will be useless in Japan, so he decides to find a way to return it. With this in mind, Yuya heads into the forest and remembers that there is a way to return the sword, although he is not sure if the recipient will be willing. Finding a suitable place. He recalls how he used summoning magic to summon the shadow wolf in his room and then sent it back to the other world. He figures that if he sends the holy sword along with the familiar creature, it can return to the kingdom. Hope to agree if he asks carefully. He chants the summoning spell Raylia. The air swirls as the spell takes effect, and the giant black dragon appears before Yuya. He is surprised that he hasn't seen it in a long time, and apologizes for calling it so suddenly. The creature recognizes Yuya, wondering if something is wrong, thinking that he has returned to his world. Raylia is surprised to find that she is in Yuya's world. She didn't expect that he could summon her to another world with just his magic. But without wasting time getting straight to the point, Raylia asks what Yuya needs, while noting that she doesn't think he just summoned her for a friendly meeting, although that wouldn't be a problem. Yuya confirms. In confusion, asking her to bring something back to the palace, he remembers that Raylia usually avoids contact with humans and doesn't like to visit the palace. Since Raylia is his familiar, exchanging information would be easier through summoning magic. So he asked, not ordered. Raylia replied that she didn't mind his request, as long as it was from him, but she wanted one condition in return. She wanted to see the legendary world he came from with her own eyes. Yuya agreed but pointed out that she couldn't walk around in her dragon form. Immediately, Raylia transformed into a beautiful woman with a seductive figure, causing Yuya to blush and reluctantly agree that this form was fine. But he warned her not to reveal anything about the other world, as people in Japan didn't know about the existence of the other world. Raylia was very excited when she saw the motorcycle, feeling excited about the smooth roads of this world. She even hugged Yuya tightly as the bike glided, enjoying the new feeling, and Yuya explains that they make up for their lack of magic with advanced science. He confesses that he himself does not fully understand magic in the other world. Raylia nods in agreement and is captivated by the food of this world, half joking that she would destroy an entire country for a single parfait. When Yuya reminds her that he is just a penniless student, she suggests that he sell one of his scales or claws. However, upon learning that they are worthless in this world, she is disappointed and saddened by the prospect of not being able to eat more sweets. Angrily, Yuya drags Raylia outside, saying that he has classes in the afternoon. Surprised, Raylia declares that she will accompany him, or if not, she will explore the city on her own. Afraid that Raylia will bankrupt him with sweets, Yuya reluctantly agrees to let her come along. At the university, Raylia is amazed by the size of the building, exclaiming that it is large enough to house an entire town full of students. When the receptionist asks for their identification cards, Yuya panics. But Raylia quickly produces a membership card from the other world. Surprisingly, the receptionist accepts it without question. To Yuya's shock, he mutters that he didn't know membership cards from the other world were accepted here. But Raylia just laughs and reveals that she used magic to make the staff see what she wanted them to see. Yuya compliments her for her quick thinking, puts on her guest card, and prepares to show her around. Just then, a cane appears, smiling coldly and asking who the woman with him is, making Yuya feel a chill down his spine. In response to Akan's question, Raylia nonchalantly calls Yuya master and asks him to introduce them, making Akane even more intimidating. Quick-witted, Yuya said that Raylia was an acquaintance of his father and called him master, because she was not fluent in Japanese. Akan stepped forward to greet Raylia, surprised to learn that Yuya had talked about her many times. She continued to tell that Yuya had said that they had an unfortunate, but inseparable relationship since high school and that she was not a very good companion. Those words made Raylia a little unhappy. Seeing the danger, Yuya panicked and tried to run away to the classroom, but Akan quickly grabbed his shoulder and said she wanted to go with him, even knowing his class schedule. Akan did not miss the opportunity, leading Raylia on a tour of the school, not giving her a second to talk to Yuya alone. While lost in thought, Yuya is suddenly pulled back to reality when a classmate named Akio appears, asking about the pretty girl, and suggesting that they get to know each other. Yuya tries to stop, but Akio, a third-year law student and senior in the travel club, is not easily chased away. Akio is famous for repeating the year because he is too busy traveling. When Raylia and Akane approach, Yuya introduces Akio as someone who seems shallow but is actually kind. Without hesitation, Akio starts flirting with Raylia, praising her as incomparable. Akan coldly interrupts, asking who he compares her to. At that moment, a rugby club member named Ijima tries to join the conversation. But Akio rudely tells him to stay away from Raylia. Making Ijima angry and ready to fight, Yuya tries to calm the situation. But Ijima grabs him by the collar and tells him to leave. Instead of being scared, Yuya just laughs, comparing him to a cute hamster protecting its territory. Raylia suddenly interrupts, insulting Ijima, before grabbing his face, lifting him into the air, and coldly asking him what he was going to do to her master. She then dropped Ijima with a terrifying warning, making him look like he had just encountered a formidable final boss. Yuya approached to check on Ijima's condition, and coldly warned him to never act so arrogant again, scaring him away. Akane asked what happened and who Raylia really was. Yuya replied that she was stronger than most people. He then quickly bid farewell to Akio, who was trying to get Raylia's number, and quickly dragged her home. Although Yuya only intended to give Raylia a brief introduction to Japan and then return to his mission of returning the Holy Sword, he had expected things to get this complicated. Reluctantly, he invited her in, but Raylia asked if she was really allowed, and she wanted a chance to greet his family, whispering that if anything happened, she would use magic to fix it. Upon opening the door, Yuya is shocked to see his sister Ayumi holding a banner welcoming Raylia, explaining that his best friend, Akane, had told him about the visit. Ayumi also reveals that she had informed their mother that there would be guests. Yuya introduces Raylia to his mother, who has prepared meal and ice cream, much to Raylia's delight. Ayumi then leads Raylia into the bathroom, where the three girls happily bathe together, while Yuya, sitting outside, listens to everything with confusion and embarrassment. That night, Yuya falls into bed exhausted after a long day, and wonders if Raylia is okay with being with the girls. In the next room, Akan directly asks Raylia about her relationship with Yuya. Raylia replies that they have a soul connection, but that doesn't mean they have romantic feelings. Akan jumped up in joy. But Raylia quickly added that she still understood Yuya's appeal as a man, causing Akane to shiver involuntarily. Ayumi asked Raylia if she liked her brother. After a brief hesitation, Raylia replied that she liked him, but was unsure of her specific feelings. Ayumi then turned to Akane and asked if Raylia was her rival. But before Akane could answer, Raylia turned back to ask about her relationship with Yuya. Akane awkwardly replied that they were just friends. But when Raylia casually asked if they had slept together, Akane was flustered, muttering inarticulate confessions and unable to answer clearly. Ayumi, while playing around, declared that she would test what kind of person Raylia was and smiled, telling the girls to go easy on her. Meanwhile, Yuya in the next room was worried that Raylia might have revealed something she shouldn't have. Unable to sleep due to anxiety, he opened Ayumi's door to check but was chased out by the three girls in unison and slammed the door shut. Returning to bed, Yuya tried to divert his thoughts to the task of returning the Holy Sword. Raylia recalled the first time she met Yuya, when she felt like someone was calling her from inside the cave. Having gotten used to going long periods of time without anyone visiting, she often spent her time sleeping, until 2 years ago. When life gradually returned to peace, Raylia felt depressed and melancholy. She had left her cave 2 years ago and had only returned for 2 months, but for a creature that had lived for so long, that period of time was no different from a short dream. It all started when Yuya and his comrades appeared in the cave while she was sleeping. Raylia disliked humans for their greed and tendency to start wars. She warned Yuya's group that if they did not leave, they would die by her hand. Raylia did not hate them, but if they tried to disturb her peace, she would not hesitate to take action. However, undeterred, Yuya approached her and asked her to lend them her power to protect the country and the humans from the Demon King. Raylia refused, because she believed that both humans and demons were the same creatures, and did not want to interfere in their dispute. But Yuya once again did not give up, proposing a bet. He asked Raylia to give him a challenge that was not too impossible or too long, and if he lost, he would accept all her conditions. If she won, she had to lend them her power. The cave shook as Raylia laughed loudly. She asked him what his purpose was. And Yuya replied that he only wanted to return to his old world after being summoned by the goddess Valianess. Raylia realized that Yuya, a person from another world, had no reason to bother with the troubles of this world. Yuya admitted that he had many grievances with Valenis, but he would not be able to return with a smile if he abandoned the humans he met in Wiltrius. After some thought, Raylia agreed, and asked Yuya to use his power to subdue her by force, so that she would recognize him as her temporary master, and then be willing to help. Tia was worried and begged Yuya to choose another challenge. But he only smiled, drew his sword, and asked Raylia to be gentle. The battle ensued between them. Although she disliked humans, Raylia could not help but be impressed by the steadfast gaze of Yuya, who refused to back down. Regardless of the difference in power between them, he continued to attack relentlessly, surpassing his own limits. Despite not being able to defeat her, Yuya never gave up. His persistence impressed Raylia, and she eventually accepted defeat, recognizing Yuya as her master for a short time. With his strong will and ever-improving skills, Yuya gained Raylia's trust. Perhaps she wanted to see where he would go. Or perhaps she sensed his fragility. But either way, she was curious about what Yuya would show her in the future. Back in the present, Raylia thanked Akane and Ayumi for the fun time they had together. Yuya was surprised to see that she had made it through without any problems. The farewell was a formality, as Raylia could not return to the other world unless Yuya brought her back. They decided to meet again on the mountain where he had summoned her, with Yuya telling her not to stop by any restaurants along the way. As they say goodbye, Raylia suddenly approaches and places a kiss on Yuya's lips, leaving him red and embarrassed, while she smiles teasingly at Akane before leaving. Yuya is confused, not understanding why she kissed him, but Akane notices the happy smile on his face and begins to chase after him, causing Yuya to run away. Meanwhile, in the other world, Raylia soars through the forest in her dragon form, heading to the capital to carry out a mission Yuya assigned her. She laughs as she recalls their last meeting, when he suddenly asks why she kissed him, especially after Ayumi and Akane threw a tantrum, chasing after him. Surprised, Raylia asks if he didn't like the kiss, and when Yuya tries to explain, he eventually gives up, and said that it didn't matter anymore. He then handed Raylia a box full of parfaits, revealing that he bought them because he knew she liked them so much. Raylia happily hugged him, pressing his face against her chest, almost suffocating him. Surprised, Yuya asked if she was going to kill him, and Raylia just giggled, playing with her breasts. She smiled, saying that she would definitely repay the gift, but Yuya quickly said no, and asked her to just bring the holy sword back to the palace. He pulled the sword from his magic box, and added more desserts for Mel and his friends, asking Raylia to pass on the message and the gift. She also put these in her personal inventory, joking that they would probably gossip about Yuya over the desserts. Before he sent her back to her old world, Raylia asked him to summon her at least once a month. Yuya admits that he will miss her, making Raylia happy. Meanwhile, in the capital, Princess Melthuria is sitting at her desk, sighing as she looks at the pile of documents in front of her. She steps out onto the balcony to enjoy the cool breeze until she sees a figure approaching from the sky. After a while, Melthuria finally realizes that it is the Black Dragon. She is surprised to see it here. Raylia lands in the palace courtyard and quickly transforms into her human form, with both Princess Melthuria and Prince Leon rushing to greet her. Raylia coldly tells the prince that she came here to fulfill a request from her master, but her eyes immediately warm up when she sees Melthuria. Ignored, Leon leaves dejectedly, leaving his sister to handle Raylia's request. A little jealous of the close relationship between Mel and the dragon. When Mel asks Raylia about this change, she recounts that she is here at Yuya's request, and pulls out the holy sword from her inventory, throwing it at a surprised guard without thinking twice. Mel, still confused, asks Raylia to wait a moment before leaving. Mel then asks if Raylia has met Yuya, and the dragon replies that she was summoned by Yuya and he took her on a tour of his world, which she found extremely interesting. The princess tries to process this information when Tia, the heiress maid, appears with a passionate look in her eyes and bows to the dragon, suggesting that they sit and talk in the garden. Raylia happily invites Mel to join her and reveals that she has brought souvenirs. Tia is delighted to see Raylia and walks over in her maid outfit. They greet each other warmly, then turn to look at the princess, who is still standing there like a statue. Tia approached Mel, gently saying that it seemed like it would take a while for the princess to return to reality. Then pulled out a slipper from somewhere, and hit the back of the princess's head. Princess Melthuria snapped out of her trance, looking around in confusion and wondering what had just happened, as well as where the slipper came from, while noticing a slight pain in her head. Tia, the maid, avoided the question. At this moment, Mel saw Raylia and remembered her words about meeting Yuya, which surprised Tia. Raylia promised to tell the details, then took out a dessert box from her inventory, making the princess and Tia fascinated by the parfaits. Raylia offered them some, and when they took a bite, both were fascinated by the delicious taste of this dessert. Tia even wondered if it was possible to recreate this in the kingdom. Although Mel mentioned the dessert for her brother and father, in the end the three of them decided to eat it all since they were both busy. The princess finds it hard to believe that Yuya could summon a dragon from another world, while Tia wishes she could be bound to Yuya through a contract. Raylia explains that this should be impossible. But perhaps Yuya is special, or perhaps Valienus intervened for some reason. Raylia thinks that the goddess might have other intentions of using Yuya. But she is determined to prevent the goddess from disturbing Yuya's peaceful life any further. Although not a god, Raylia still possesses great power and can sense if something happens to Yuya thanks to their contract. Mel shyly asks if they will see Yuya again. And Raylia replies that it is very possible. She explains that when a summoner summons a familiar that they have made a contract with, there are cases where the familiar is summoned with other familiars that were with it at the time of summoning. Furthermore, Yuya had promised to summon her at least once a month. Tia was overjoyed at the prospect of seeing Yuya again, while Mel was almost in tears of happiness. When Harris said that the princess would have a chance to see Yuya again, Mel denied it. But was even more confused when the servant pointed out that she had never mentioned Yuya's name. Raylia laughed and asked the princess why she had to deny her feelings, when everyone knew that she loved him. Mel denied it again, but Harris reminded her that whenever she thought of Yuya, she would smile and blush at the sound of his name. Raylia reassured her that she would ask Yuya to take them both to visit when things settled down, which made Tia even more excited. But when they returned, they found Mel had fainted from the realization of her true feelings for Yuya. Despite her duty as a princess, Tia frantically tried to wake Mel up, while Harris just laughed in amusement at the princess's embarrassment. Meanwhile, Yuya was in dire straits. Once a hero summoned to another world to defeat the demon king and the evil god, now that he had returned to his own world, he was in financial trouble. Yuya approached his mother and gave her a necklace he had made himself, lying that he had learned how to make it through the internet. His mother was overjoyed to receive the gift. After fighting for survival for 3 years in the other world, Yuya finally returned to Japan. Although he imagined that his life back would be filled with joy, he soon realized that everything here required money. With the salary from his part-time job not being enough to live on, plus studying for college, Yuya considered using magic to earn money. However, not wanting to get involved in any illegal activities, he decides to use his alchemy abilities to craft his own accessories from the gold and silver in his inventory and sell them online. He recalls the times when his mother had shoulder and back pain, and infuses the necklace with fatigue-restoring abilities. Although it is not as powerful as orthodox magic, the jewelry still has certain effects on the wearer. Yuya makes a special necklace for his mother, and when his mother happily shows off her new gift to her younger sister Ayumi, she immediately asks for a gift of her own. Yuya smiles and gives her a puppy-shaped necklace. Ayumi, excited about his online sales plan, offers to help him design the website, and Yuya happily agrees, promising to give her a share of the profits. Yuya's mother is delighted with the two brothers' cooperation, reminding them not to forget their studies, and asks him to bring her lunch to her office next week. And when she has to go to work earlier than usual, Yuya suddenly thinks about his business. While at Tokyo General Hospital, there, Nurse Adachi Miyuki complains about her stomach growling when she is hungry, hoping no one will hear. Just then, Yuya appears from behind, greeting her. Miyuki, who is used to him bringing her mother lunch, returns Yuya's greeting and announces that she has just been called to the medical office but will be back soon. Miyuki shyly asked if Yuya would make any more, and he cheerfully said that he had prepared enough simple dishes for 5 people, encouraging her and her colleagues to enjoy them. Nurse Takahashi Kyoko then also came over after hearing Miyuki praise his cooking skills. And then Nurse Ayama Ran also appeared, unable to hide her excitement. Miyuki suggested waiting until Yuya's mother returned so the group could eat together. Yuya took the opportunity to display some of his handmade accessories to ask for opinions. The nurses all found them adorable, especially when Kyoko recognized his mother's necklace that she had shown off a few days ago. Kyoko praised Yuya's craftsmanship, saying that it didn't look like a handmade product at all. Yuya cheerfully asked them to choose which one they liked best. When he turned around, he saw a girl standing at the door watching. The girl immediately ran away when their eyes met, leaving him and the nurses happily choosing accessories. Miyuki approached and asked what was wrong when he mentioned the girl. Miyuki revealed that the girl was named Mia, 10 years old, who had just been transferred from the pediatrics department to their ward due to some special circumstances. Ron added that Mia was very weak so it was dangerous for her to wander around alone. Yuya decided to go look for her. After a while, Yuya found Mia sitting alone on a chair outside the hospital. He greeted her and said that the nurses were looking for her. Mia asked who he was, and Yuya introduced himself as the son of a nurse, reminding her that they had met in the nurse's office, and asked Mia to go back inside. Mia firmly refused and looked angry. To cheer her up, Yuya offered to show her something interesting if she agreed to return to her room later. Mia finally agreed after some hesitation. Yuya raised his hand and told Mia to look at his fingertips. Then he created small fireballs that lit up the night before disappearing when he snapped his fingers. Mia was amazed and asked how Yuya did it. He just smiled, refused to reveal it and said it was a secret. Because he couldn't tell her that it was real magic. She wanted to see some more magic tricks, but Yuya refused because it was late, promising her that he would show her something even more amazing if Mia was good and listened to the nurses. She asked him to promise, and the two kept their promise by linking arms. A few days later, Yuya returned to the hospital. The nurses were startled to see him appear at the right time. Kept asking about the accessories he gave him the other day and whether he made them himself. Yuya was stunned, secretly worried that something had gone wrong because he had used materials from another world, or maybe he had done the crafting wrong. But instead, the nurses happily said that they felt full of energy and that their back pain had disappeared. One even said that her skin looked smoother. Yuya was relieved to hear that, and explained that he had only made them from regular silver and a special type of crystal. However, they were still skeptical and one joked that maybe Yuya was the one with magic. Yuya smiled wryly, joking that he had wished that each item would bring good luck to the wearer when he made it. He then asked the nurses about Mia's room. Remembering that he had brought her back to her room, the nurses asked if he had a special relationship with Mia. Yuya told her about his promise to her, making the nurses understand the reason. The girl became very well behaved, making the nurses very grateful and thank Yuya for his help. Yuya then asked why Mia was transferred from the pediatrics department to the surgical department. But the nurses only revealed that Mia had an argument with another child, and to avoid affecting her psychologically, they decided to move her to another area. When Miyuki was called away, Yuya continued to Mia's room and found a boy standing at the door, surprising him. Yuya asked if he had any business with Mia, but the boy tried to walk away. Yuya quickly grabbed him and carried him under his arm, taking him to the waiting room to talk. Yuya offered the boy a drink and asked the question again, only to be called uncle. Despite being a university student, Yuya correctly guessed that this was the boy who had caused trouble with Mia and asked his name. The boy introduced himself as Ichinose Yu and admitted that he had said some bad things to Mia. Through the story, Yuya learned that Mia's parents rarely visited her because of their busy work, and she often looked on with envy when she saw other children's parents coming to visit. On one occasion, when Yu's mother brought him a new manga, Mia became angry and threw the teddy bear at him. Hurt, Yu angrily said that Mia's parents did not come to visit because of her attitude. Yu's mother was furious with him for saying those words, and Yu felt regretful. He really wanted to apologize to Mia, but she was transferred before he had the chance. And even though he knew where Mia was, Yu still didn't have the courage to go see her. Hearing this, Yuya offered to help and picked Yu up, carrying him to Mia's room. Mia was sitting on the bed reading a book, her face brightening when she saw Yuya enter, but she was surprised to see Yu with her. Yuya gently urged the boy, and after a moment of hesitation, Yu bowed his head and apologized to Mia for what he had said. The two children looked at each other silently, until Mia's mother, Uno Ayako, entered the room, surprised to see Yuya and Yu there. Yuya introduced himself and Yu, explaining that he wanted to apologize, and that he had come to fulfill his promise. The mother revealed that, because the argument started with Mia throwing things at Yu, she planned to go to the boy's house to apologize. Looking at her daughter, she gently reminded Mia to apologize to Yu to end things. After everything was settled, Ayako introduced herself as Uno Ayako, and Mia eagerly urged Yuya to perform the magic trick he had promised. Yuya told Yu and Uno to sit down and watch. Once everyone was seated, he began to create fireballs that flew around the room, making everyone amazed. He then poured water into a small bowl, and scooped it up and made it float, and then suddenly splashed the water at Yu, making the girls giggle. He then made paper cranes fly through the air, and then asked Mia what her favorite animal was. Mia happily answered that it was a giant sea cockroach. Surprised by the answer, Yuya asked her to choose another animal, and Mia chose a naked mole rat. Her mother reminded Mia to choose a more normal animal, and Mia eventually chose a kitten. Yuya took out a bead and a handkerchief from his pocket, asking Mia to look closely. He used the skill to transfer from the Otherworld's item box, and pulled out the handkerchief to reveal a glittering kitten necklace. Mia was surprised and delighted, and Yuya gave her the necklace. He continued to do the same thing to Yu, and gave him a dove necklace. Finally, he made a similar gift for Ayako. Although she was hesitant at first because she found the gift too valuable, she reluctantly accepted the expensive gift from Yuya. But he reassured her that it didn't cost much, and encouraged her to wear it with Mia, since they matched and looked beautiful. Seeing her daughter's happy face, Ayako agreed. In fact, Yuya had made these jewelry especially for Mia, with spells to ward off illness so that both Mia and her mother could wear them as a pair, making Mia feel less lonely. As she left the room, Ayako thanked Yuya for doing such a wonderful thing for Mia. She commented that his magic trick was so impressive. that she almost believed it was real magic. Yuya just smiled wryly, thinking to himself that he might have used too much magic in front of everyone. Ayako said that this was the first time, since Mia had been sick, that she had seen her this happy. Yuya noticed that Uno also seemed to be in better health thanks to the healing magic he had cleverly installed in the room, making her feel more energetic. Although using magic in the modern world could be considered cheating, Yuya was happy to see that his power could help others. He hoped that this would help Mia get better. Before parting ways, Uno asked Yuya to visit Mia after her surgery. And he happily agrees. Elsewhere, a group of armed men completes preparations for an assassination mission against an ambassador, armed with heavy weapons. One of them confirms that the diplomat's schedule is still going as planned. While one of the assassins complains that the preparations have taken more effort than expected for a country that is supposedly exhausted from peace, their leader reminds them that their goal is to negotiate, as the ambassador's country has many allies in Africa and the Middle East. He warns his men not to cause unnecessary deaths. But the men seem unconcerned, claiming that they can eliminate anyone they deem necessary, and that the death cultists mean nothing to them. The leader then announces that the mission will begin at 11 p.m. the following night, with the ambassador and Japanese government officials as targets. Meanwhile, after many hours of hard work, a boy happily announced that the costume that he designed himself is finally complete. Yuya tries on the Henjin hero costume that he made. And he comments that it looks very suitable for Yuya. This is part of Yuya's part-time cosplay job. And the boy admits that he had to adjust the costume quite a bit because Yuya's body shape has changed so much. He enthusiastically asks Yuya to do the signature rider kick to attract attention. The boy is Saito Yosuke, a tokusatsu otaku and a science student at the same university as Yuya. He hired Yuya to be a cosplayer for the big summer-winter cosplay event held every year. Yosuke is excited and promises to pay him handsomely. Short on money after Raylia's visit, and with Ayumi and Akane also demanding fair treatment, Yuya agrees to do the job despite the embarrassment and awkwardness in order to save up for the motorcycle training camp that will start during the summer vacation. While they rest, Yuya turns on the television, and then, Saito asks him about Raylia. After hearing it from Ayumi, Yuya replies that his sister went with Akane to the Persian art exhibition. And immediately the news reports an explosion at the museum, where armed gunmen from abroad stormed in, took the ambassador and several government officials hostage, and locked themselves in the building. Saito is shocked to realize that it is the museum where the exhibition Ayumi attended was taking place. After unsuccessfully trying to call his sister, Yuya also sees the news and fears the worst. Realizing the danger of the situation, he uses magic to locate Ayumi and Akane in the museum, determined to save them if necessary. However, in order to keep his powers a secret, he realizes that he needs a disguise. He immediately uses magic to put Saito to sleep so he can borrow a cosplay costume. At the museum, the terrorists warned everyone to keep quiet, while Ayumi and Akane were also in the crowd. Akane tried to reassure Ayumi that help would arrive soon, and in her heart she still hoped that Yuya would be there, though she thought that there was probably not much he could do in this situation. Meanwhile, the former hero Yuya flew towards the museum, unable to use teleportation. Hiding himself with inhibit perception and disguising himself to hide his identity, he floated above the museum. Sensing the location of everyone in the building and quickly identifying Ayumi thanks to the magical necklace she wore. Thinking about his next move, Yuya realized that stealth wouldn't work on the vigilant terrorists, and he had never learned stealth skills since those skills were for spies or criminals, not a hero like him. With no other choice, he decided to use his power. First, Yuya searched for bombs, discovering one in the park, and immediately covered it with a time barrier to prevent it from detonating, surprising the surrounding people. After returning to the air, he located the gunmen and the hostages. Yuya started the attack by taking out a guard at the entrance and quickly knocking him unconscious. Moving deeper into the building, he set up sound barriers on each floor to prevent the noise from spreading, then took out each terrorist one by one. When he found a terrorist pointing a gun at the child protecting his mother, the terrorist fired at the child, only to have his bullet deflected by a force field. Yuya rushed forward, bent the barrel of his gun, and knocked him down instantly. He patted the boy's head and said a few reassuring words. Everyone was surprised to see a hero in a costume rescuing them. Yuya then informed the hostages that he had cleared a safe path for them to escape. Yuya quickly waved goodbye to the last hostages as they left the building. He then went in to finish things off. The remaining 3 terrorists were guarding about 100 hostages, including the ambassador. Seeing them recklessly raid such a large facility with so few people, Yuya suspected that they had some kind of plan. When he spotted a hostage right next to the terrorists and a mysterious bag, he realized it wasn't a bomb. Unable to wait any longer, Yuya decided to rush in. The first terrorist was surprised when Yuya used magic to disarm 2 of his accomplices, then continued to take him down with a powerful rider kick. The remaining 2 were shocked to find their weapons ineffective. One managed to dodge the attack, but the other was knocked to the floor. The last terrorist pulled out a detonator and pressed the button, but nothing happened. While he was confused, Yuya quickly used magic to knock him unconscious. He then checked on the ambassador's condition, lowers the barricade around him so the guards can protect the ambassador. Yuya announces that he has dealt with the terrorists and evacuated the hostages, advising everyone to leave the building, when he confirms that Akane and Ayumi are safe. His sister looks at him suspiciously but reassures herself. Yuya is relieved to see that his suit still conceals his identity. When the last of the hostages have left, a Special Forces police officer, Barjan, approaches him and asks if he was the one who took down the terrorists. Yuya refuses to reveal his identity and warns about the 2 bombs that he has disabled, then casts a spell to reveal them in his hands. Yuya tries to calm the police as they hide behind their shields, explaining that he has covered them with a barrier and destroyed the trigger, and asks where he can put them down. The police, confused, tell him to wait. After a while, they thanked him for his cooperation and asked him to accompany them to the police station. Yuya makes an excuse and disappears to their surprise, leaving the task of reporting the scene to the police. He teleports to Saito's house, where a magic circle has been left as a precaution. Seeing his friend still sleeping soundly, he checks the suit for any damage and quickly puts everything back to its original state. Although a little embarrassed, Yuya is glad that he can use the suit to go to the museum. However, this is in stark contrast to his confident attitude when he puts on his hero costume. Back home, Yuya ponders that using such magic might leave another black mark on his history. He decides to go to sleep. Tia asks Melthuria to let her join the battle, but is refused, saying that the battle has nothing to do with her. Instead, the princess sends her to find Raylia and the monsters for the sake of the country and the people who care about Japan. But the next morning, Ayumi patiently knocked on his door to wake him up. Reluctantly getting out of bed, Yuya realized that his shameful past was now a mental burden. He thought that the hero costume mission would end there, but he was completely wrong. The media was quickly filled with stories about the mysterious hero. And because the TV in the house was always on, Yuya was forced to listen to embarrassing stories about the mysterious hero he had disguised as. Every time he saw it on the screen, he kept a calm face, but inside he wanted to crawl into the ground to hide. He remembered the silly hero poses he had made and, just hoping that everything would be over soon. A week after the incident, Yuya meets his sister in the living room while the news shows the hero on the screen. Ayumi looks closely and says that the hero looks a lot like Yuya. She asks him if he is the hero. He denies it, saying that he was at Saito's house at the time and couldn't fly to the museum. She teases him that it will take him another decade to become a wizard and also reminds him that he is still single. Just then, the alarm on Yuya's phone rings, reminding him that it has been almost a month since he last summoned Raylia. When Ayumi asks him if there is anything, Yuya says that Raylia is coming. Displeased, Ayumi asks if she will be staying here anymore. Yuya suddenly realizes that he stepped on the wrong landmine. A moment later, Raylia appears and smiles that he kept his promise. Yuya asks her about the sacred sword and she confirms that she returned it. Suddenly, Tia appears and hugs Yuya. Her scent surprises him. Raylia recounts that after returning the sword, she told Mel and Tia about her encounter with Yuya, and Tia insisted on coming to see him. Yuya is concerned that if Tia stays too long, it will cause trouble. Tia shyly asks if she can stay, but Yuya points out that her beast ears and tail will attract attention in a world without beastmen, and that she will have to register. However, she can still stay in their house. Yuya realizes that Tia cannot be locked up in the house forever, so Raylia suggests that she can use magic to change her appearance. Tia expresses that she does not want to cause trouble for Yuya and that she is happy just to see him again. Hearing this, Yuya asked Raylia to hide Tia's animal ears and tail, making her overjoyed. Raylia transformed into her human form and prepared to cast the spell on Tia, warning her that it might feel a little strange at first. After casting the spell, Tia's animal ears and tail disappeared, leaving her looking like a normal girl. Tia touched her new round ears and the place where her tail used to be in surprise, happily remarking that she now had ears exactly like Yuya's. Looking at the hole in Tia's old tail, Yuya offers to buy her a new set. On her first ride in a car, Tia is delighted with the smooth feeling of the car on the road, while Raylia compares it to riding a motorbike. And Yuya thinks of riding a horse-drawn carriage in the other world. At the clothing store, Tia tries on a few new outfits, and Yuya finds them to look good on her. Although the fabric is quite thin and not sure if it can protect her, Tia is still very happy to wear the dress from the hero world, happily clinging to him, while Raylia looks at Tia with envious eyes. After that, the three of them continue to stroll around the mall, stopping to enjoy parfaits before returning to Yuya's house. On the way back, Yuya tries to repeat the false story that the three of them had to follow to explain why Raylia and Tia could stay with him, while keeping Raylia's magic a secret as a backup plan in case anyone gets suspicious. Despite his nervousness, Yuya calms himself down before opening the door to his house. When the door opens, Yuya is surprised to see his younger sister, Ayumi, waiting with a serious expression on her face. Ayumi looks over Yuya's shoulder in surprise, seeing him with two beautiful girls, and can't help but suspect that her brother might have kidnapped them. Nevertheless, Ayumi invites the three of them into her house. Tia curiously asks about Ayumi, and Yuya explains that she is his sister, asking her to leave Ayumi alone. He avoids Ayumi's questions and just watches as the two friends from the other world talk to her. That evening, while washing the dishes, Yuya was relieved that dinner had gone smoothly without any incident, although Ayumi was still a little sulky. Afterward, Raylia and Tia emerged from the bathroom, thanking him for preparing dinner. Yuya invited the two to enjoy a cup of tea while his sister took a bath. When he was alone with his two friends from another world, Yuya decided to ask them directly about Tia's real reason for coming here, suspecting that there might be something more than just a simple desire to visit Earth. Tia was flustered, falling into a state of shock when he mentioned Melthuria, asking why Tia left without telling Mel. Finally, under pressure from Yuya, Raylia reluctantly admitted that Melthuria had asked Tia to come here to protect her. Yuya was stunned by that answer and turned completely pale when Tia revealed that the Velza Empire had declared war on the Ariana's kingdom. The Velza Empire is located to the west of the kingdom and, although relatively new, possesses a powerful military. Since the Demon King expanded its territory, the empire has become greedy, constantly seeking to gain more land and often causing conflicts with neighboring countries. However, in the recent war against the demons, they cooperated to protect the continent. Tia recounted that 20 days ago, the empire invaded the Ariana's kingdom with a force of 60,000 troops and quickly captured many villages and cities. The Ariana's kingdom refused to surrender and asked for help from neighboring countries, but due to the devastation from the war against the Demon King, these countries could not muster enough forces to stop the empire's advance. The Ariana's empire and the alliance of cities in the east advised the kingdom to evacuate. In this situation, Melthuria asked Tia to flee to Raylia. Yuya felt that it was too early for the empire to declare war so soon after the war with the Demon King, while the continent was still in ruins. He speculated that if they could have attacked 20 days ago, perhaps the empire would have started preparations as soon as the war ended, or even deliberately waited for the right time to attack, while everyone was still exhausted from the war with the demons. This thought made him extremely angry, to the point that Raylia had to sternly tell him to calm down. After Yuya apologized, Tia confessed that they had decided not to tell him about the situation to avoid worrying him. Turning to Raylia, he asked if she could take him back to Ariana's, but when Raylia flatly refused, Yuya explained that he only wanted to know if it was possible and had not asked her for help. Raylia sternly asked what Yuya would do if he knew about it, emphasizing that this was a war between humans and that he should not get involved. She understood that he was worried about Melthuria and the others, but she advised him to keep his distance to avoid unnecessary trouble. The conversation was interrupted when Ayumi entered the room, asking if everyone was arguing. Yuya reassured his sister and offered her a cup of tea. However, Raylia suddenly interrupted and joked that Yuya refused to sleep with her, causing Ayumi to immediately call her brother a coward. Tia also joined the conversation, and the three girls quickly overshadowed Yuya, turning the conversation into banter. After finishing the story, Yuya lay on his bed, thinking about the situation. He admitted that the war between humans had nothing to do with an outsider like him. However, he still couldn't shake his worries about the fate of Melthuria and the Ariana's kingdom. Besides, he was also hesitant about whether to give up his newly regained peaceful life in Japan, if he decided to return to that world. Despite hating his hesitation, Yuya began to think about how to return to that world. He realized that Tia was able to come here because of her connection to Raylia, who had helped summon her. He believed that, with a little experimentation, he could repeat this with himself. However, the challenge lay in how to bring someone back from the Japanese side himself, since the last time, it was the goddess who had brought him back after completing the mission. Yuya had an untested idea of how to do it, but he knew that if the plan succeeded, he would have to prepare himself for what was to come. Yuya was having a good time while playing with Akan's dog Elizabeth in the park. Akan commented that he was full of energy even in the early morning. That day, Yuya decided to go for a morning walk with her, and although he had often seen her and the dog when he was training before, this time he had a clear goal. Akan, somewhat jealous, asked if he was really okay with being here with her while Raylia was at home with his sister Ayumi. Yuya replied nervously that Ayumi was taking Raylia around the city. The girl reluctantly left and went to buy drinks. When Yuya and Elizabeth were alone, he promised Elizabeth some dried meat if she would accompany him for a bit. That evening, Yuya arranged to meet Raylia and Tia in the park. When he arrived, he announced that he planned to return to Wiltrius to intervene in the war. Although he admitted that Raylia was right about him being an outsider, he still felt that there were too many friends and benefactors in the kingdom that he could not abandon. No matter what the Empire planned, he could not sit idly by and let them fend for themselves. Raylia paused for a moment, then asked if he was really serious, reiterating that he had sacrificed so much to return to Japan, yet now he wanted to return to the battlefield. She wondered if he had any way to return if things went badly. Yuya replied firmly that he planned to return after ending the war quickly, as he had to return to take his university entrance exams next month. While he could not completely end the war in such a short time, he hoped to stop the Empire's invasion before then. Seeing Yuya's determination, Raylia offered to take his place on this mission, using her power to destroy the Empire's army. Yuya thanked her but declined, explaining that returning was out of selfishness, and that he wanted to join the war for his own good. Hearing this, Raylia asked Yuya how he planned to return to the other world. Yuya remembered that Tia had come to Japan through a connection with Raylia, and he deduced that he could make a contract with an animal in Japan, then summon it to the other world and teleport with it. Therefore, he tried making a contract with Elizabeth and succeeded in summoning the dog, teleporting himself with Elizabeth. Raylia was still not completely convinced, but Tia stepped forward, declaring that she only wanted to be by Yuya's side. Although there were important people in the other world that she had to protect, if she had to choose, she would choose Yuya over them. However, if she could not abandon anyone, she wished to help everyone. The hero smiled upon hearing this, and after a sigh, Raylia finally agreed to his plan. This made Tia happily hug Yuya. He deduced that it would be best to leave as soon as possible, choosing to leave immediately after informing his mother and sister that he would be away for a while. In the other world, the Ariane's army was camped out in the fields, with Crown Prince Leon in command. He judged that they had predicted the Empire's movements and promptly set up a siege. General Regan enters the tent, reporting that the enemy is massing west of the grasslands and will likely invade in the next day or two. Vice Captain Bruno Reg confirms the enemy's numbers at 80,000, describing the composition of their forces in detail. At this point, a knight announces the arrival of General Vistas and Duke Grandes from the Holy Urvania Empire, as well as a delegation from the City-State Federation. The Crown Prince thanks them for coming, but General Vistas coldly reminds them that if they fail to stop the Empire, they will be next. The City-State Federation delegates also agree, bringing all the forces they can muster. Regan predicts the attack will take place the next day, and plans to organize a calculated retreat, weakening the enemy forces along the path of attack. The Crown Prince was worried about the disparity in numbers and feared being surrounded, but General Vistas bluntly reminded him that it was too late for regrets and that they could only win if each of their soldiers defeated 3 enemies. The court magician Dukaran suggested that an escape route be left for Crown Prince Leon in case the battle went badly, so that he could continue to lead the nation in the future. Crown Prince Leon replied that the kingdom was safe in the hands of the king and Melthuria, and that he had another brother to look forward to, so he was determined to fight to the end with his soldiers. The conversation was interrupted by a loud commotion outside, and a soldier rushed into the tent, warning of an approaching magical creature, causing everyone in the camp to stand alert and look outside. No one could make out exactly what was approaching, but as Crown Prince Leon gazed at the horizon, he gradually made out the shape of a dragon. The soldiers began to panic, but to their surprise, Leon realized it was Raylia. The black dragon landed just outside the camp, and Leon hurried towards it. He was surprised to see Tia and Melthuria step down from Raylia, and is even more shocked when Yuya appears confidently, declaring that he came at the right time. The hero has returned. Rewinding a bit, Ayumi questions why Yuya left with Raylia and Tia as soon as they arrived. His mother asks if this is something he can't talk about now, or will tell when things calm down. Yuya is actually returning to the other world to serve as reinforcements in the fight against the Velza Empire, and the 2 visitors from the other world have also returned for the same reason. Although he wants to explain everything to his family, he thinks it might be too much. He promises to tell everything later. And his mother agrees, since he's no longer a child. She only asks that as long as he doesn't do anything embarrassing, everything will be fine. Yuya says that he'll be back in about a week to prepare for the exam next month. He then heads into the forest with Raylia and Tia, where they successfully teleported to Raylia's cave in the other world. Yuya then told Raylia that he wanted to return to the capital of the kingdom of Arianas. Raylia offered to carry him on her back, but Yuya pointed out that this was a human war, and dragons had no need to get involved in human conflicts. Raylia simply replied that she was merely helping her master by contract, and that accidentally killing an enemy was not a problem. Yuya happily accepted her help, climbed onto Raylia's back with Tia, and the three teleported to a field near the capital. From there, Raylia spread her wings and flew over the city, leaving the citizens below in awe as they watched the giant dragon fly by. As she landed in the castle courtyard, several guards quickly rushed to confront the intruders, but then gasped in surprise when they realized that the hero had returned. Yuya requested to speak to the king, and the guards immediately stood at attention, then hurriedly carried out his request. Princess Melthuria ran along the corridors of the palace with a pounding heart, eager to reunite with Yuya. She knocked on the door and then excitedly entered the room where he was waiting, hugging him in tears, hoping that this was not a dream. Hero Yuya half-jokingly warned that if she kept squeezing him like that, her chest would press against him. But that was to no avail as her physical condition made the warning unnecessary, much to her displeasure. Standing behind Melthuria, the maid heiress boldly teased the princess for rushing to hug her like that, and Yuya turned to greet the maid. She replied, with an expectant look in her eyes, and immediately suggested that he perform the ritual with her, even not minding if he wanted to choose the princess before her. Melthuria began chatting with Yuya, but was interrupted when a servant came in to report that the king was ready to receive them. Leaving the conversation unfinished, Melthuria led him into the throne room. As they approached King Arius and Queen Lafia, Yuya knelt down, but the queen immediately asked him to stand up. The king expressed his surprise and joy at seeing the hero return, and then asked why he had returned. Yuya explained that Tia had come to his world, and that he had learned about the current situation of the kingdom. Yuya decided to return with Tia to punish the invaders, intending to join the fight against the Velza Empire. The audience erupted in cheers upon hearing this, but just as the king was thanking him for his help, Minister of Internal Affairs Belrius interjected. As the second highest ranking official in the kingdom and trusted by the king, Belrius had always been sincere and devoted, having funded the construction of many orphanages for children who had lost their parents in the war. However, he had always been against involving people from other worlds, like Yuya, in the affairs of the kingdom, leading to many heated arguments between them. Belrius stood up to protest, claiming that the last time they were forced to accept Yuya's participation in the war against the evil god was due to the goddess' intervention. However, this time, he did not think it was wise to involve people from other worlds. The king saw the minister's stubbornness, but still pointed out that the war was currently a great threat to the kingdom, and if the situation continued, they would suffer more losses. He also emphasized that Yuya had volunteered to help this time. Belrius tried to argue further, but before he could say anything, Yuya suddenly appeared behind him and pulled his hair hard, revealing a shiny bald head as the wig fell off. As the room was illuminated by the light reflecting off Belria's head, the room lit up. Yuya made a light joke about the minister's superb ability to control light, causing the royal family to laugh loudly, while Belria stood still, blushing in embarrassment. Yuya recalled that 2 years ago, he had cast a spell on Belriace, causing him to lose a strand of hair every 100 steps, and he had forgotten to lift the curse when he left. Defeated by Yuya, Belriace declared that even if he contributed to the war, he would not be rewarded, and angrily left the throne room. The king took this as the minister's tacit approval of Yuya's participation in the war. With this matter resolved, the king informed Yuya that the kingdom had allied with the Holy Irvania Empire and the Free Cities Alliance. The combined army had gathered in the eastern plains of Fristol, and the battle was expected to break out in the next few days. The king asked Yuya to go to the front to support the forces there, and Yuya happily accepted the order. Melthuria then asked her father for permission to accompany Yuya, despite his initial objections. She is confident that with Yuya's presence, they will win. She also emphasizes that with the presence of Vice Captains Reg, Duke Ranz, Tia, and Raylia, the hero squad will return, helping to raise the morale of the soldiers. Seeing the benefits of this proposal, the king officially orders Melthuria to join Yuya and join Leon's army. Yuya prepares to depart as soon as Melthuria is ready, promising to bring good news back in a few days. The king and queen express their deep gratitude for Yuya's tireless help, telling him not to overexert himself. Back in the present, Prince Leon meets Yuya and the group outside the camp, surprised to see him and his sister. Yuya hands Leon a letter from the king. Reading the letter quickly, Leon decided to leave the questions for later and confirmed that Yuya had participated in the battle, expressing his gratitude for his presence. He invites Yuya into the command tent to discuss strategy for the upcoming battle. At the command tent, Prince Leon asks Yuya and Raylia if they would mind attending the meeting. and Yuya reassures them that Raylia is only there to help him. After settling down, Yuya asks the prince about the strength of the armies and the strategy they are planning to use. General Regan explains that the enemy has 20,000 heavy cavalry, 15,000 light cavalry, and 40,000 infantry, along with archer units and support forces, for a total of 80,000 soldiers, along with an unknown number of mages. Meanwhile, the Ariana Kingdom's army had 20,000 men, the Holy Irvania Empire contributed another 10,000, and the Free Cities Alliance contributed 5,000 troops, in addition to a volunteer force of 3,000 adventurers. They were facing an army twice their size. Yuya realized that he alone would not be enough to close the gap in numbers, but the situation was not as desperate as he thought. He wished he could use a wide area magic to wipe out the entire enemy force in one hit, like in the manga. However, all of his training focused on combat skills to face boss battles, confronting demon kings and evil gods, leaving him lacking the skills to deal with multiple enemies at once. He concluded that the key to victory would lie in the coordination between the Alliance's troops. Leon then announced that, according to the reconnaissance report, the enemy would be advancing in a crescent-shaped formation, with light cavalry on the right flank, heavy cavalry on the left flank, and infantry in the center, with support units in the rear. He believed that the enemy would attack the center with the heavy cavalry, while the light cavalry surrounded the two sides, while the infantry advanced and the heavy cavalry on the right flank would deliver the finishing blow. Yuya commented that this was a typical strategy for a large army, due to the difficulty in moving such a large force. He noted that the ideal way would be to surround the enemy, but due to their small numbers, they were unable to do so. He predicted that the enemy would attack in that formation while they held the majority of the battlefield. With this, Yuya realized that his preparations would not be in vain. Leon stated that with Yuya joining, their strategy was now completely flexible. He asked Yuya to explain his plan. Yuya wished to keep the battle as short as possible to minimize the loss of manpower, especially since any casualties would put more pressure on a country already exhausted from the war with the demons. Duke Ranz looked at Yuya with concern and asked if he planned to repeat the tactics he used at Fort Garda. That fortress had been used by the Demon King as a base for his attacks to the south, providing a safe staging point for offensive operations. At that time, Yuya had made a pact with other beasts besides the Raylia dragon and the Shadow Wolf, as a creature capable of controlling the small animals in the area. Thanks to that, they had gathered a large swarm of insects. General Vistas recalls that, thanks to the power of this creature, Yuya destroyed 10,000 demons and rendered the fortress unusable, while also scaring their own army. Rand shuddered, remarking that it was not magic, but the power of the creature that Yuya had summoned. However, Yuya explained that he would not use that method this time because there was not enough time and the terrain was not suitable. Vice Captain Reg announced that the adventurer force was being led by an A-rank group from the kingdom's headquarters. Yuya asked Prince Leon to summon them to prepare for the upcoming plan. After some discussion and presentation, Yuya pledged to minimize the casualties of the army while disintegrating the Imperial army. However, he also noted that the adventurer group would bear the heaviest burden of the plan. Reg was concerned about the number of manpower, and General Regan suggested sending mages to support the adventurer group, leaving the Earth mages and builders to complete the preparations before the battle began. General Regan commented that the outcome of the battle would depend on whether this strategy succeeded, and suggested that there was no need to test it beforehand. As he remains optimistic about the outcome, Yuya thanks everyone for their support, explaining that Mel will help him and his adventurer group, while Raylia will take care of the Imperial Light Cavalry, but he stresses that she does not need to completely destroy the group, just make them retreat after losing their commander and suffering enough losses. He also assigns Tia to assist Raylia in searching for the commanders from above. Although the two agree to the plan, Raylia insists that she can quickly destroy the entire enemy force. However, Yuya explains that this is a war between the kingdom and the empire, and a dragon appearing in the middle of a conflict between humans will cause trouble later on. Prince Leon also agrees, emphasizing that even if Raylia wins thanks to her power, this will not stop other nations from attacking them. Therefore, they need to actually contribute to the outcome of the battle. He also pointed out that they were prepared to fight even without the heroes, and while the current situation was more favorable, they still needed to carefully consider their position. A knight enters the tent, announcing that the Minotaur's Horn group has arrived. Yuya questions the Greek meaning of the name and Prince Leon lets them in. The adventurers introduce themselves, but Yuya quickly realizes that their names are all suggestive puns. The group's leader, Eric Kalk, proudly declares that it is an honor to fight alongside the hero. But Yuya cannot accept this and tries to stay calm, as he explains that they will play an important role in the battle. After explaining the plan, Eric realized that only their group could do the job, and eagerly agreed. making Yuya secretly happy. At their professionalism, if the name was ignored. The next day, the massive Imperial army began to advance into the battlefield in the predicted formation. And the Alliance also took up a frontal position. Yuya stood watching from a nearby hill. Noting that it was already midday, the sky was overcast and the wind had died down, creating ideal conditions for his plan. He and his group were to the south of the Imperial army, hiding themselves with sensory blocking magic and observing that the front part of the army was ready. But the rear part was still busy moving. He guessed that the enemy would finish their preparations by the end of the day and begin their attack the next morning. The Alliance army had finished their preparations first, just as planned, to put pressure on the enemy and make them lose their guard against the scheme Yuya is about to execute. Raylia declares that it is time to act, and Mel affirms that she is ready. Yuya reiterates everyone's roles, announcing the start of the plan. To make it work, he brought some items from Japan, including his new favorite motorcycle, along with a chainsaw and other tools, although it has significantly reduced his wallet. He tells himself that if these items do not work, he will take out all his frustration on the Imperial army. Mel sits behind him, and Yuya sets the plan in motion. The Alliance army begins to move to the beat of the war drums. And Prince Leon, though a little worried, is encouraged by Dukrans that with Yuya's help, they will surely win. He suggests that Leon, instead of worrying about the battle, should think about how to deal with the aftermath of victory. Leon replied that he was not worried about losing, but noted that Rand seemed to have a lot of trust in Yuya, a trust that came from having fought alongside him. He brushed off Leon's concerns, saying that while he had no interest in politics, he was confident in his fighting ability. If the preparations were complete, nothing could go wrong. However, he also warned Leon about his somewhat unpleasant personality. Meanwhile, the Imperial heavy cavalry began to advance vigorously on the battlefield. Yuya observed and noticed that his troops had been ordered to hold their positions to buy more time. Placing a shield around the chariot, Yuya charged straight into the cavalry, pushing down any cavalry that dared to block their path. At Yuya's command, Melthuria activated his fire magic, igniting a series of fireworks and firecrackers all around. The sudden explosions and lights terrified the Imperial cavalry. And despite the commander's attempts to control them, the frightened horses began to struggle, throwing the cavalry off their backs. Taking advantage of the chaos, the Alliance army counterattacked vigorously. Mel was elated to see their plan working. Yuya used his chariot to ram several cavalrymen. But with the shield, he was only able to take down a few hundred. In order to disintegrate the entire cavalry formation, he prepared for Mel up to 30 sets of fireworks and firecrackers to use. Horses in this world have similar personalities to horses on Earth, being very sensitive to loud sounds and having a strong instinct to flee, especially when frightened. When the first horse panics, the entire herd of horses follows suit. The tactic creates the perfect opportunity for the Alliance army to charge. With this front resolved, Yuya and Mel continue to advance, while on the other side, the adventurer group confronts the enemy's heavy cavalry. Their mages create a series of fireballs, causing damage to the cavalry formation. The cavalry commander tries to calm the soldiers, but is suddenly hit by Yuya's chariot, causing him to fall. He notices that the Minotaur party is holding their ground, slowing down the enemy's left flank. When he hears the cries for help from the wounded, Yuya asks Mel to come to his aid. The princess quickly arrives at the scene, healing the wounded adventurers, deciding to stay behind and support them with her healing powers. Further on the battlefield, Raylia observes the situation. As the battle intensifies, she tells Tia to prepare because their time has come. Tia affirms that she is ready, even though she doesn't need to prepare much. But Raylia notices Tia's tail wagging excitedly. Raylia reminds her to stay calm because the real battle has yet to begin for them. Tia apologizes, confessing that she was too excited at the thought of finally being able to get her revenge on the Empire. Raylia suddenly remembers that Tia's family died while being enslaved, and Tia herself was almost sold into slavery. The Empire is the only country that has not abolished slavery, so Raylia understands Tia's motivation. Seeing her enthusiasm, Raylia thought that Yuya would be pleased to know that Tia was so determined to complete her mission, and so was Raylia herself. Raylia transformed into a dragon right in front of them, and breathed fire through the enemy ranks. She then flew high, avoiding the arrows that couldn't penetrate her thick hide. Tia focused on searching for the enemy commander, and finally located him, while trying to reorganize their formation, and signaled Raylia to attack. As the Imperials fired at them, Tia demanded that Raylia give her that thing. Raylia opened a small portal, allowing the beast girl to take out a Molotov cocktail. Tia lit it and threw it at the enemy cavalry. the flames spreading throughout the enemy ranks, causing them to panic. Raylia thought to herself that if Yuya wanted to burn the Imperials, she could definitely use her fire breath. Meanwhile, Tia laughed maniacally as she prepared her next weapon, enjoying watching the soldiers scream in pain as the flames burned them. Raylia began to feel uneasy, wondering if her comrade was possessed by a demon, seeing Tia's terrifying cruelty. However, Tia was still eager to instruct her to attack the next target, and Raylia continued to spread fire on the battlefield. Meanwhile, at the Alliance army camp, a sentry reported that Yuya would soon enter the center of the Imperial army. General Regan led the 1st and 2nd battalions to charge, while Prince Leon watched from afar, seeing the fireworks lighting up the sky, recalling the tactics that Yuya had explained to them. According to the plan, the light and noise from the fireworks would distract the enemy heavy cavalry and slow them down for about 10 minutes, opening up an opportunity for the Allied cavalry and infantry to attack fiercely, deciding the battle. The Alliance infantry would avoid engaging the charging cavalry at full speed to minimize casualties, only attacking the stunned knights. Although some cavalry was able to penetrate the defense line, when the sentries reported that the Imperial cavalry had closed in on the first line of defense, the prince ordered an attack. The Imperial cavalry charged into offensive spikes, and as the first knights charged through the gaps between the spikes, they were suddenly knocked down by the steel wires strung between the spikes. Although they were initially surprised, some knights discovered a gap without the wire, and believed they had found an escape route. Charging confidently, they were knocked down by the next hidden obstacle. Standing on the watchtower, the guards reported to Prince Leon the success of Operation Wire. Yuya had used a chainsaw to prepare the spikes and provided steel wires to stretch across the spikes at a height high enough to make it difficult for the Imperial Knights to notice, until it was too late. He also placed camouflaged obstacles in the gaps to make the enemy mistake them for escape routes, thus buying time. After passing through the first fence, the Imperial army advanced to the second line of defense, only to fall into hidden traps. According to Yuya's plan, his strategy was to minimize the casualties of the Alliance while maximizing the losses of the enemy. By fighting tirelessly and leading the troops on the front lines, he demonstrated the qualities of a true hero, inspiring his soldiers while protecting the people. He always appeared on the front lines, especially in battles against the Demon King's army and the evil gods, fighting tirelessly to achieve victory. However, Prince Leon noticed that Yuya's plans for this battle were somewhat unexpected and strange. He was about to say something, but as if reading the prince's mind, Duke Lant commented that this was not Yuya's style at all. The mage explains that Yuya always arranges things so that they have the advantage and initiative in every situation by setting traps and using clever tactics, a style he notes as unpleasant like Yuya's personality. He recalled the time when they faced the Demon King, when Yuya distracted his opponent with a speech, while silently preparing magic to disable his opponent's magic and movement abilities, then from a distance he launched spells and magic bullets to attack powerfully. Yuya only fought fairly as a last resort, always prioritizing safety and willing to use tricks to win. While Leon was pondering this, the guard reported that the Imperial army had returned to formation and was advancing rapidly. Lant and the prince stepped forward, along with their mages, waiting for the enemy to get closer. Meanwhile, Yuya finally reached the center of the Imperial army, realizing that there were too many soldiers for him to charge through with just the barrier. Although the barrier protected him and his car from harm, he was losing momentum. His speed had been reduced by half. He wished he had a bigger car to break through, but he put that thought aside. Suddenly, he saw a carriage with a man on top, whom he assumed was the supreme commander of the Imperial army, and he decided to charge straight towards him. Suddenly, a knight appeared right in front of him, raising his greatsword and swinging it hard against the barrier, causing his carriage to stop abruptly. Yuya recognized the man opposite, who also immediately recognized him as the hero who had returned to this world, surprised by Yuya's appearance. The former hero then raised his sword, declaring that he had returned to help his friends clean up the trash. As Yuya and the Imperial warrior fought, the man realized that the summoning circle had been destroyed, and questioned how Yuya had returned. This made Yuya understand that the Empire had tried everything to prevent him from returning. Without replying, he continued his attack, quickly closing the distance. Then took a bottle of tear gas from his inventory and blinded his opponent. Ignoring the insults, Yuya took the opportunity to finish off his opponent with a single slash. He then focused on the supreme commander of the Imperial army sitting on the carriage, who was angrily reprimanding the soldiers and urging them to kill Yuya. Jumped onto the carriage and asked if he was the supreme commander. At the opponent's panic, Yuya threw a powerful punch, instantly knocking him unconscious. Recognizing that this was the crown prince of the empire, Yuya originally intended to capture or kill the commander outright, but decided to take him back to the Alliance camp for Prince Leon to deal with. Although he knew little about politics, Yuya guessed that keeping him alive might bring greater benefits. He quickly teleported back to the Alliance camp, where Prince Leon and Duke Lance were stunned by the horrifying sight before them. All the Imperial cavalry that had entered the camp had collapsed within seconds. Leon asked the mage what kind of poison he had used. But the mage replied that it was something Yuya had taught him, although he himself did not fully understand. According to Yuya's explanation, humans needed air to breathe, and the air needed a certain concentration of fire particles, which were also necessary for fire to burn. If the mage used magic to seal the space from all sides and create wind to push these particles out, their concentration would drop to dangerous levels, causing suffocation. Prince Leon mused that the soldiers should have been able to hold their breath, but when he sensed something was wrong, Leon realized that the mage had explained that the concentration of particles had dropped to the point where they would lose consciousness after just 1 or 2 breaths. This principle applies to any creature, be it animal or monster. The mage admits that he cannot explain further as he himself does not fully understand, but recommends that they not reveal this. Aliyah agrees, emphasizing that discovering a new way to kill with magic is extremely dangerous and suggests covering it up. Yuya appears, and without looking back, Prince Leon asks if he has succeeded. Looking at the pile of corpses, Yuya affirms that he has won. At this moment, everyone hears the retreat signal echoing from the Imperial army. Prince Leon coldly announces that they have won. As the battle draws to a close, Prince Leon immediately orders the soldiers to prepare to take care of the wounded. While the infantry captures the Imperial stragglers, the cavalry patrols the perimeter to ensure security, and the engineers set up new barracks. Looking around as everyone rushes to carry out their duties, Yuya saw that there was nothing left to do for now, and as the soldiers fortified the perimeter, he considered assisting in the relief effort. However, he noticed that the atmosphere seemed heavy while he was there. Although the Empire no longer seemed to be an immediate threat, Yuya knew that this was just a temporary reprieve, as they had yet to completely destroy the enemy forces. Suddenly, he saw Raylia flying above him. And as she landed with Tia, Yuya congratulated them both on their contributions to the battle, asking if they were injured. Both Raylia and Tia affirmed that they were safe. As the Empire was no match for them, he noticed Tia looking at him intently, expecting praise, and he patted her head in thanks, making her extremely happy. Raylia confidently announced that things were not difficult, asking about the upcoming plan. Yuya said that they would discuss it when everyone returned and suggested that they take a break. Tia excitedly agreed to wait nearby, her eyes filled with excitement at the compliment. Watching them, Yuya felt happy to realize that he was no longer alone. Meanwhile, at the Alliance headquarters, Prince Leon praised everyone for their efforts, saying that thanks to their efforts, the Imperial army understood that the Alliance was not easy to defeat. As the representative of the Kingdom of Arianas, he expressed his deep gratitude to everyone. General Regan then reported the casualties, stating that there were 1,253 dead and 895 seriously injured. The losses were divided equally between the kingdom, the territories, the Federation of City-States, and the adventurers and volunteers, with the latter suffering the heaviest losses. This did not surprise Yuya, as when Mel stepped in to treat them, many were caught in the crossfire with no way to retreat, facing the heavy cavalry without giving up even an inch of ground. Even though he knew it was war, Yuya still felt the weight of the great loss from the plan he himself proposed, making his mood heavy, and Raylia noticed his gloomy expression. General Regan continued to report on the Empire's losses, estimating that 12,000 heavy cavalry had died and 3,000 were captured, while 10,000 light cavalry had died, mostly by Tia and Raylia on the left flank. He also listed the infantry losses, including 15,000 mercenaries who deserted, most of whom sought asylum. In total, he calculated that the Imperial army had lost 31,000 killed and 5,000 captured, and counting deserters, the Imperial force had dropped from 80,000 to 30,000, with an unknown number of wounded. They still retained around 10,000 infantry stationed at Fristol. The representatives of the Alliance were astonished at the heavy losses the Imperial army had suffered in just one battle, with one of them calling it a complete victory and expressing excitement at the overwhelming victory, thanking Yuya for his strategy and efforts, as well as Raylia for her strength. However, neither Yuya nor Raylia seemed happy with the praise. Duke Lance then said that although they had won, it had come at a great cost, with them also suffering heavy losses at Fristol, where the surviving Imperial soldiers were stationed. Second Captain Bruno Reg continued, explaining that although Fristol was on Kingdom territory, the city was currently occupied by the Empire, and unlike on the battlefield, the enemy was holding civilians hostage in the city, making fighting there completely different from the previous battle. While the others continued to argue, Yuya realized that Lance and Reg had noticed his unhappiness, changing the topic of discussion as they knew each other too well after fighting together for so long. With over 4,000 soldiers killed and wounded in the previous battle, Yuya's praise only left him feeling empty. Although he did not regret his strategy, the heavy loss still weighed heavily on his heart. The Imperial army suffered much greater losses, but 3 years of living in this world had taught Yuya that leniency towards the enemy was dangerous. He could not sympathize with the Empire and knew that he had to focus on his next move. Prince Leon then declared that the war was not over, but that today they would celebrate their victory. With many resources captured from the Empire, Leon assigned his men to guard duty, and the rest were given a rest. He especially praised the adventurers and volunteers for completing the dangerous mission, taking greater losses than any other force in the army, and contributing to keeping the Allied infantry fighting continuously sent them his sincere gratitude. Leon declared that everyone would be rewarded upon returning to the capital and would prepare wine for the victory banquet. The leader of the Horn of the Minotaur group thanked the prince for his gratitude, while frankly sharing that most of them were risking their lives for money or excitement. He smiled at Yuya and said that they chose to do this out of passion and did not want anyone to feel sorry for them. When Leon accepted this, Yuya offered the prince 10,000 of his cavalry. Seeing their surprised faces, Yuya quickly made it clear that he did not need the force immediately. Tomorrow would be fine. General Reagan asked him what he planned to do with those troops, and Yuya explained that if he directly attacked Fristol, which the Empire occupied and held its people hostage, it would only cause more innocent people in the kingdom to die. Instead, Yuya boldly proposed that they target the imperial capital. After hearing this, both Prince Leon and General Reagan fell silent, unable to contain their astonishment at his reckless plan. Yuya went on to explain that although the capital had a defense force of 30,000, most of them were just guards and sentries, lacking real combat experience, completely different from the seasoned warriors in Fristol. Furthermore, Yuya had visited the imperial capital before and knew the terrain well. The Empire had devoted all of its military forces to the invasion, leaving them spread thin and unable to support the capital in time. The guards protecting the royal palace were the most elite, but now that the Empire could not mobilize an army to defend itself, Yuya was confident that he could advance straight to the capital and capture the emperor. With a bold plan, he declared that if the kingdom wanted to attack the capital, now was the best time. Thinking about this, Prince Leon admitted that this strategy could help them turn the tide and asked General Reagan for advice. General Reagan replied that if the horses were stripped of all armor and only kept their saddles, they could reach the capital in about 10 days. Fortunately, they had enough horses after capturing thousands of the Empire's warhorses from the battlefield. But they still needed more people to join the journey. Duke Lance suggested that some mages who could use storage magic join. Each one could carry the equivalent of a carriage, and together they could provide the logistical needs for a 10-day march. Leon agreed to this plan, and declared that the remaining mages would help hold Fristol. However, another officer pointed out that even with that support, their forces would not be enough to hold out if the Empire sent troops again. Yuya understood this to be true, as even though they had inflicted a heavy defeat on the Imperial army on the battlefield, the remaining 40,000 soldiers in Fristol were still a great threat. The entire Allied force of 20,000 soldiers was nothing compared to them. Hearing this, Raylia volunteered to stay behind, confidently declaring that if the Imperial army dared to leave Fristol, she would transform into a dragon and scare the hell out of them. Yuya was surprised by her proposal, but General Reagan immediately concluded that with the dragon's help to protect Fristol, they should set off for the imperial capital as soon as they were ready. Leon then announced that he would take on the role of commander-in-chief of the force sent on this mission. Both Yuya and Melthuria were surprised, with Yuya nervously emphasizing that his plan was still dangerous and Melthuria also insisting that her brother should stay behind to command the army to reclaim Fristol. However, Leon was adamant. He understood the risks but emphasized that after they successfully captured the Empire's capital, there would be great political upheavals. He pointed out that Yuya had no intention of completely destroying the Empire. Leon emphasized that they needed someone who could make decisions about signing treaties or overseeing the post-war recovery, and that he was the most suitable candidate. He also added that Melthuria was not good at political negotiations, and teased her that, since she seemed determined to spend time with Yuya, her feelings might make her lose her objective view. This made Melthuria blush and deny it in embarrassment, while Leon reassured her that General Vistas would be the main commander, while he would just follow behind Yuya and promise not to put himself in danger. In the end, the princess gave in. Yuya silently told himself that, if things went wrong, he could use teleportation magic to bring the prince back to the kingdom. Problem solved. Leon declared that they would prepare tomorrow and depart at dawn the following day, taking a detour to fool the imperial forces at Fristol into thinking that Leon had returned to the imperial palace, before turning towards the imperial capital. Since this invasion was not in the original plan, Yuya was glad to have more soldiers with him. But also couldn't help but worry because Mel and Leon, with their royal status, were willing to rush into danger. In the following days, the army began their journey towards the imperial capital with 12,000 cavalry, while the remaining force was ordered to surround Fristal to avoid being attacked from behind. The cavalry rode towards the capital under Leon's command, with the land's General Vistas as his deputy, along with Bruno, Reg Lant, and Tia. General Reagan was in charge of the siege of Fristal, with Raelia, Mel, and the volunteers assisting. The other adventurers split into small groups to capture the lost Imperial soldiers, but the Minotaur's horns decided to accompany Yuya to the capital for some reason. Yuya thought that if things went smoothly, the war with the Empire would almost be over. And even if something went wrong, he wouldn't let it stop him. As the journey slowly came to an end, the capital of the Beals Empire finally came into view. Although it should have taken longer, they arrived in just 7 days riding heavy war horses without armor. The group decided to enter by charging straight into the main gate and using magic to break the gate. Once inside, they rode at full speed down the main road reserved for nobles, heading straight for the palace. Yuya was worried about not encountering any patrols or soldiers on the way, and became suspicious when he saw the palace gate wide open, fearing that it might be a trap. He summoned Keguru and sent him ahead to scout for traps and capture the emperor if he met no resistance. What was even more surprising was when Keguru, the giant wolf, charged past the guards without anyone stopping him. Yuya decided to enter the palace, with the confidence that he could handle anything that came his way. His confusion only increased when he reached the palace courtyard, and was greeted by a noble-looking figure, accompanied by an elderly man and several guards. When the group dismounted, Yuya and Prince Leon were introduced by the young man as Leonce Luchar, the third prince of the Beles Empire. Yuya was surprised to meet the third prince of the empire, as he had never known about his existence before. He only knew about the emperor and the foolish crown prince he had captured on the battlefield, and had heard that the second prince seemed gloomy. Although he had heard of a third prince in passing, he had never expected things to turn out like this, feeling as if he had been ambushed when he faced Leonce. Breaking the tense silence, Leon introduced himself to the third prince, assuming that with his warm welcome, Leonce knew why they were here. Leon did not hesitate to ask the prince to bring their emperor to meet Otham. After a moment of silence, Leonce solemnly replied that the emperor had passed away 3 days ago. This news left both Leon and Yuya shocked and confused. Leon continued to ask if the crown prince was the successor to the throne, and Leonce admitted that under normal circumstances, it would be obvious. But now, the crown prince was facing charges of mobilizing the imperial forces without the emperor's permission. If these charges were proven true, the crown prince would be guilty of treason and would no longer have the right to succeed. Dissatisfied with the explanation, Leon asked if this meant that the surprise invasion of his kingdom was launched by the crown prince without the consent of the empire. Leonce replied that this was not necessarily the case, that while the throne did not fully accept the current situation, the crown prince's actions still affected the empire's image, and therefore, the potential successor would still be held responsible. Prince Leon is growing impatient and asks for clarification on what that means. Leonce explains that while the crown prince is on trial, his brother Bard, who is second in line to the throne, has also renounced his right to the throne, as he is only interested in his studies. Leon asks if that means the third prince is now the emperor. When Leonce confirms that, Leon continues to ask about how they will end the current war. With a pensive look on his face, Emperor Leonce formally offers to surrender to the Arianis Kingdom, the Ilvinia region, and the Eastern City-State Alliance. Both Leon and Yuya are surprised by this quick surrender, but Leonce explains that with the return of the hero and the Black Dragon on Ariana's side, the Empire is no longer interested in prolonging the war, as it will only bring suffering and destruction to the people. Yuya realized that the Empire had no other choice, as they had mobilized their entire force for the invasion and lost half of their troops, only to face the enemy army closing in on their hero. Although there would certainly be some concessions. But Yuya felt that Leonce could have asked for a peace treaty or truce before surrendering. He thought that the emperor's sudden death was not a mere coincidence, regardless of the cause, and with the crown prince falling out of favor and the second prince abdicating the throne, Yuya suspected that the third prince had been secretly manipulating the situation. However, his motives remained a mystery. Leonce then invited them to rest comfortably before negotiating the terms of surrender, and offered to arrange accommodations for them right in the imperial palace. Yuya and Leon looked at each other, having no reason to refuse the offer, but not daring to let their guard down either. After confirming that Keguru had not detected any signs of ambushes or traps, they agreed on the condition that they could bring 20 soldiers and keep their weapons with them, which the emperor agreed to. A servant was assigned to serve them when Leonis left. Yuya whispered to General Vistas that everything was going too smoothly, doubting the host's true intentions. Vistas and Leon both shared this concern, Leon telling his comrades to stay alert. Once everyone was seated around the table, the Emperor's aide began the negotiations, presenting the Empire's formal surrender to the Allies and asking for their terms. Leon immediately demanded that the Imperial Army withdraw from Frystal immediately and return all the looted property, as well as compensation for the damage caused by the invasion. In addition, Leon demanded the abolition of slavery in the Empire, the criminalization of the slave trade, and the enactment of laws to compensate those enslaved and assist in their repatriation. He also announced that the Allied forces would be stationed in the Empire until the above demands were met, and that the cost of maintaining the forces would be entirely covered by the Empire's funds. While the Empire guaranteed the security of the Allied troops and officials, the royal secretaries whispered. Yuya thought to himself that the terms regarding slaves would be very difficult to accept. The Empire's labor force relied heavily on slaves, which kept costs down, allowing for large military expenditures and territorial expansion, with even civilians owning slaves. Furthermore, Yuya did not expect them to sit idly by and accept payment for occupying their country. After some thought, the Emperor suggested that only the slaves from the Allied nations be freed, as some were sentenced to slavery due to crime or bankruptcy. Admitting that they had not done enough to stop the slave traders' raids, but arguing that it would be difficult to distinguish the origins of the slaves, Yuya insisted that all the slaves be freed. The Emperor agreed and then moved on to the issue of occupation, agreeing not to impede the Allies but demanding that the conditions be set for the Allies to leave and the Empire to regain its independence. They spent an hour discussing the details, and finally reached an agreement. Regardless of the third prince's plans, the war was officially over, and even though a truce had been reached, Yuya still felt that things weren't quite over yet. Meanwhile, Leonis silently noted that the conditions were neither completely unexpected nor excessive, but were exactly what he needed for his plan. In fact, he believed that the idea of a unified continent of the Empire was a fantasy, and that slavery was unsustainable. Those who benefited from it did not contribute back to the Empire, while it itself caused poverty and mass migration by disrupting the labor market. Leonis planned to take this opportunity to abolish slavery, create jobs for the poor, and revive the ailing economy, using the defeat in the war as an excuse to push through changes despite internal opposition. The Empire had suffered great losses, but Yuya's appearance not only turned the tide of the battle. When returning to Ariana's, Yuya and Tia disguised themselves to enter the palace and report to the king. Beast Girl was elated to have successfully protected the kingdom, but Yuya still feels heavy. After all the bloodshed in the battle. Upon entering the palace, they are greeted by the maid Eris, and she jokingly says she wants to offer herself to show her gratitude. Melthuria reminds her to stop joking, but Eris only laughs and asks if that means she has to wait her turn, causing the princess to blush. Yuya steps forward to greet the king, receiving his congratulations. As Yuya hands over the agreement with the Empire and a letter to him. After reading the letter, the king orders Minister Belrice to oversee the deployment of the occupation force to the Empire. Although reluctant, the minister thanks Yuya as he passes by. The king then thanks Yuya for everything, but Yuya replies that he simply wants to protect his friends in the kingdom, emphasizing that he should thank Tia as well, Raelia and Melthuria. However, His Majesty still insisted on rewarding Yuya, and reminded him that since he was from another world, he once again offered to marry his daughter to him, making the princess blush with embarrassment. When the king hinted that the princess, although lacking in bust, made up for it in other aspects, the queen beat him up. The queen took her husband's place, thinking of a suitable reward and sending her sincere thanks to Tia for all she had done. Seeing that everyone he loved was safe, Yuya felt relieved and happy. However, the sudden appearance of Eris, who once again offered her invitation, made him panic. Yuya decided to lock himself in his room to avoid these awkward situations, and eventually returned to the shrine of the goddess Valienis. Yuya asks to be left alone to pray. And then the goddess appears, talking in an unpleasant manner. When he asks about his concerns, the goddess suddenly becomes serious, agreeing to answer. Yuya asks why he can still use magic when he returns to his world. The goddess replies that all the magic and power he possesses are self-trained, so she cannot take them away. She only gives him a few starting skills like storage, appraisal, and multilingualism, but everything else is up to him to master. Yuya mentions that summoning between worlds is impossible, and asks what she is planning. The goddess explains that she never really thanked him for defeating the evil god Ruenavilio. She gives him 2 teleportation artifacts, allowing him to travel between the 2 worlds, keeping the time at the starting point the same as when he returned before. When Yuya asks what she really wants him to do with these things, The goddess frankly says that she wants him to start a family and leave a lineage in this world. She explains that Ruenavilia once ascended to godhood, absorbing the impurities from the world. And this means that one day, Ruenavilia will regain his divine power and history will repeat itself, as that world has no way to purify its impurities. Originally, Ruenavilia was a benevolent god who loved humanity. But when he absorbed the negative energy of humanity, he gradually lost his mind and became an evil god, spreading evil and madness into the world. The goddess wants Yuya to build a lineage in that world to help purify the impurities. She admits that she is not sure if he will agree to return. Yuya asked if she was behind the Empire's invasion. But the goddess denied it, saying it was just a dispute between humans. She revealed that by absorbing a lot of magical power and defeating Ruenavilia, Yuya has gained an extended lifespan and a portion of his divinity, allowing him to live twice as long as a normal person. In a serious tone, the goddess says that while she cannot force him, she wishes for Yuya to have at least 20 children, but ideally 100 to build a lineage. Yuya protests fiercely, shouting that she is crazy to ask a 23-year-old single man to have 100 children. After receiving the goddess's answer, Yuya decides to return, saying goodbye and wishing her all the best. The goddess disappears, leaving him alone in the temple. Although he is satisfied with the teleportation relics, the notion of an extended lifespan and the task of building a lineage weighs heavily on his mind. Yuya plans to return to his room in the palace, then use the relics to return to his world. Around midnight, he suddenly realized what he had just heard. A heavy feeling welled up in him as he collapsed, realizing that normal student life was gone forever. Back in Japan, Melthuria thanks Yuya's mother for letting her stay, promising to try to learn about the country and ask for help when needed. Tia and Raylia are also present, causing Ayumi to scream in confusion at the sight of these beautiful women. After days of facing the Empire in Wiltrius, Yuya thought he would be able to return home safely, but he was severely scolded by his mother. His mother, who normally would leave him alone if he didn't want to go into details, was different that day. When Yuya asked his mother why she was so concerned that day, she said that she felt something had changed in him. In the end, he sat down by the door and told her everything that had happened since he was summoned to Wiltrius. To prove it, Yuya used the teleportation relic to transport his mother to the other world, introducing her to his friends and family there. His mother listened to every detail of what he had experienced in Wiltrius. Even meeting the king and queen, who apologized for forcing her son to protect the kingdom despite being summoned against his will. After that, Yuya's mother listened to the story from beginning to end, without any comments. Raylia and Tia also took her to visit the capital and other important places in the kingdom, including the battlefield. They spent about 2 weeks there, and during that time, Yuya's mother became close to Raylia, Tia, Melturia, the king and queen. She even befriended Minister Belrius, with whom she seemed to have a good taste. Knowing what had happened, Yuya's mother was finally relieved. However, the peace in Wilterius did not last long. Because shortly after, Zanao appeared again. Yuya did everything he could to help the kingdom recover from the war. Yuya thought he would return to Japan to live a normal life, but his mother happily announced that Raylia and Melturia would be staying with them for a while. At that point, he had no choice but to prepare their belongings, still feeling strange about these beautiful girls. Ayumi insists on knowing why Raylia and Melthuria came to live with them and wonders why everyone is so beautiful. Yuya just jokes that it's all God's will. Everything happened so fast that Yuya started to get used to eating breakfast with everyone. One morning, he announced that he would be going out with his college friends next week and asked everyone to help him look after the house. What was even more surprising was that his sister Ayumi didn't complain and agreed right away. He also reminded Raylia and Melthuria about taking care of the house. And they agreed in a somewhat strange way, which surprised him. Ayumi whispered that Akane was equally excited, but Yuya didn't hear and was even more confused when she wished him good luck even though the exams were over. Before leaving the room, she gave him a mysterious smile. Yuya stood up, ready to go to college, with the girls watching him go. When he got to school, he saw a brand new, shiny, and extremely beautiful motorcycle parked right outside, wondering who its owner was. This 400cc bike is clearly superior to yours. Immediately fascinated and feeling a little bored, he decided to find more work to upgrade his car. Entering the classroom where he planned to meet his friends, Yuya was surprised to see Akane sitting there. When the meeting began, Akane occasionally came to hang out in the club room, but today, the meeting was about the summer trip reserved for members, and he didn't think she would sit in on the fun. To his surprise, the club president introduced Akane as a new member, revealing that she would be joining the group on the trip next week. As they went through the schedule, Yuya wondered what was going on and why she didn't tell him. She responded that he hadn't told her anything about Raylia either, revealing that she knew she was living with him and teasingly calling him a pervert. Yuya tried to explain, saying that it was his mother who decided to let Raylia stay, and that he had no idea about it. However, their argument is quickly interrupted by the club president, who jokes that they are best friends, making the two the center of attention. The president then hands out flyers with directions for the itinerary and accommodations, instructs Yuya to make sure Akane has everything she needs for the trip, and dismisses the meeting. Outside, Akane shyly asks Yuya if he is dating Raylia, Tia, or Milthuria. To which he immediately denies, panickingly declaring that he is still single. When she hears this, Akane is delighted and taunts him that he has no flirting skills, her comment cutting into his pride like a knife. Yuya is still shocked to learn that Akane has bought a motorcycle, and is even more surprised to realize that she is the owner of the new bike he saw in the parking lot. He asks if her father had agreed to let her buy one so easily. Akane's father had always been strangely indulgent with his daughter, but was extremely uncomfortable when any guy approached her. When Yuya had once come over to her house to help her study for an exam, he had given him a glass of soda mixed with soy sauce and said it was Coke, which got Yuya in big trouble when Akane and her mother found out. Yuya still found it hard to believe that he would let her buy a bike without protest. But it became clear when Akane revealed that her parents had met through their shared passion for motorcycles, and only gave it up after her mother became pregnant. He was still puzzled by the things he often said about motorcyclists, but Akane thought that he was probably just looking for an excuse to dislike Yuya. Akane had gotten her license a month ago, after taking a 2-month course, and had some trouble crossing the wooden bridge at first. Yuya asked if the upcoming trip was too much for her. But she shyly replied that they still had a few days until departure, suggesting that they could try a short trip together first. He agreed, much to her delight, and they began planning their trip for next Saturday. Yuya secretly found the peace of his current life to be special. This feeling seemed to be even more profound than the adventures in Wilterius. He understood that this simple life would be his new state. And was sure that there would be countless things that would happen, and he would encounter many troubles in this life. But this time, he felt confident that he could overcome them all. He had many things he wanted to protect, and would not let this new life be meaningless. Determined to make everything complete, he smiled, telling himself that this would be his happy ending. After the hero returned,